So don't go drunkenly singing into cemeteries about burning churches and stuff like that. I don't think good things could come out of it. Hi and welcome to another video here on my channel, Morbid History. As you might see, I'm not in my usual setup. It's because I'm at my brother's house right now, cat sitting. If you are a returning subscriber, mwah, love you so much. And if you're new, I post morbid history videos, everything really, about horrible, creepy, weird stuff that's been going on in human history. And in today's video we're talking about Kyrkogrimen, a creepy creature from Scandinavian folklore. Let's get straight on into what is actually a Kyrkogrim. It's categorized as a lone creature, a monstrosity, but also a guardian creature. They were actually seen as mostly harmless, but very, very scary and frightening. But that was actually the role that they had. The role of Kyrkogrimen was to mainly guard the church and the surrounding cemetery, of course. It would make sure that not any strandvaskare, which were the ghosts of drowned people, would come in. They would chase those away. They would chase away any kinds of ghosts or creatures that did not belong inside of the cemetery. Because of course we would have a lot of spirits that really wanted to get into the concentrated ground, and they just didn't have the right, and the ChurchGrim was there to scare them off. But also, of course, they would scare away anyone who was too late at the cemetery, anyone who's making a ruckus at the cemetery, children not being polite at sermons, teenagers having cemetery parties, which they apparently did back then. He'd scare those away. He seemed to have a bit of a full-time job, that one. Or those, because every church had one, so. And also a last little role they had was to give the priest of said church signs if anyone who had been buried there had not been able to move on and was now roaming the earth as an unrestful spirit, so that the priest could get on that, I'm assuming. Kyrkogrimen did have different names around Scandinavia. There was Kyrkrå, Helhäst, Hellhorse, Liklam, Lamb Corpse. Of course, there were these grims outside of Scandinavia, and one of the good examples of that is the Grim in England. Showed up as a big black horse. I'm sure some of you have heard of that. The black dog guarding the cemeteries in England made an appearance in the Harry Potter books, of course. So they also had a Grim, but he was usually a big black dog over there, over the pond in England. Now that we got through the whole what is a Kyrkogrim's role, what did he look like? How did it even come about? That's where the morbid history actually comes into play. Making, and I say making, a Kyrkogrim was not a nice business. The thing was that when you had decided upon a new place to build a church, you needed a sacrifice to get a Kyrkogrim, a guardian for that church. They decided that the easiest way to do this was to just take the first living thing that walked into the place where the church would be built and bury it alive. This meant that it could be a chicken, it could be a cat, it could be a dog, it could be a horse, it could be pretty much anything that stumbled its way there. And they would just take it and put it in a hole, or sometimes into the wall of the church, and bury it there alive. And then it would come out as this monstrous creature. The animals were usually described as having spikes on their bodies and being a monstrous, like, rotting version of themselves. You needed to be scary to be a ChurchGrim. But as you might have assumed, the first living thing walking into the cemetery might not have been an animal. Well, sort of an animal, but it could just as well have been a human. And there's many stories of children just waltzing in and also being buried alive. For some reason, there's always children. Because children were seen as especially good guardians after their terrible death, of course. A famous story about a child becoming a ChurchGrim is the exact same story as I told in the plague video, so I'm not gonna tell it again. But this time it's a boy that gets shown into a hole, and there he gets a sandwich, and then he gets upset because they're throwing dirt on him and his sandwich gets ruined. This was also supposed to show how innocence makes for a good sacrifice, and therefore would also be a good ChurchGrim. Instead, I'm gonna take one about a woman from Småland! Yay! Where I actually am at the very moment. Let's go. Urshult, Småland, 1800s. När en kyrka skulle byggas skulle där ha en vård eller en grim. Det vill säga, man brukade mura in ett litet djur levande. Denna grim trodde man skulle skydda kyrkan. Men när man byggde Virestads kyrka lär man ha lurat dit en gammal gumma som puttades ner i ett hål som man sedan täppte igen. Kullen där gumman begravs kallas än idag Kajselund eller Kajsebacke efter henne. För en människa var den bästa kyrkogrimen. So in this story, they didn't even wait for anyone to waltz in. They just took someone that they deemed good enough and pushed the poor old lady into a hole and buried her there. So of course these folklore tales can differ a little, but the main gist there was that buried, alive, welcome to the life of a Grim. It should also be said that the ChurchGrim took its job very, very seriously and could get extremely angry. If not at the teenagers dancing around, you know, making a ruckus, then there could be other people there making a different kind of ruckus. Once a very drunk old man walked into a cemetery at night. I'm not even quite sure he knew where he was. He started singing a song. Kloster har jag rövat och kyrkor har jag bränt, tjoho, mitt sköna unga liv. As he was walking, or rather stumbling around, he soon noticed the shape of a horse, a ghost horse, with spikes on his back and fiery red eyes glaring at him. This was enough to sober him up a bit. For a while they stood there staring at each other. He came to his senses and started running. He ran as fast as he could. Behind him he could hear the hooves coming closer and closer. He reached his home, opened the door, and just before that horse reached his doorstep, he closed it and locked. He fell asleep to the sound of banging on his door. Woke up the next morning with a headache and figured it must have been a nightmare. But when he opened his door again and looked at it, there they were, the hoof marks of the Kyrkogrim. Apparently, this Kyrkogrim got so angry he even left the church grounds, which was supposed to be pretty impossible for a Grim to do. So, don't go drunkenly singing into cemeteries about burning churches and stuff like that. I don't think good things could come out of it. And yeah, that was the story about Kyrkogrimen and the very morbid and fascinating way of making one, I guess. Let me know what you thought, and if you have any super creepy, weird, morbid folklore creatures from your home country, please let me know down below and I'll check them out because I really want to branch out a bit outside of Scandinavia. Yeah, that's basically it for this video. I'm so happy you watched. Only 80% of the people watching my videos are subscribed, so yeah, please do a little subscribe. You can always change your mind later, but hopefully you'll enjoy my future content. I'll be back soon with both the 4th iceberg and a second executions video. I have it all planned out and it's coming right your way. Yay! Giant thanks to all my lovely patrons, and check down below for ways to support my channel. Thanks!